Hello, everyone. We've got a lot to talk about. When I started today, I had an idea of what I was going to talk about. It's a variety of different things, and then something happened at about 6:26 this evening that actually fell right into place with what I was going to talk about. Last night, we voted for $1.7 million in additional money to Wyandanch Rising, which is a apartment complex and revitalization project in Wyandanch by the Wyandanch train station. Now, we've given the developer tens of millions of dollars. We gave them the property, we gave them subsidies to build, we gave them all kinds, the equivalent of approximately $22 million in tax abatements. And he came in last night asking for 1.7 million more, which was, I think, probably scheduled from years ago. And I started questioning him on it, and what I did was I pulled up, I'm not blaming the developer for this, because it's the way business is run, and I want to show the people how business is run so you can make decisions when you vote. It's the Albanese Corporation. It could be any corporation. It could be anything in the world. I don't want to pick on these people. But what I started to do was to look at how this happened. And how this happened was back from the IDA years ago under the Blown administration when he was the supervisor of the town of Babylon. The IDA is the Industrial Development Corporation Association. And what that means is they give tax breaks to different organizations to stay in the town, to revitalize the town, so they can build there. It makes it a little bit more affordable. But in looking into this over the past 24 hours, since I voted no to give $1.7 million for landscaping, lighting, some electrical work to a developer who's already developed 177 units. And their contribution to the 177 units was $8 million. That comes to $45,000 a unit. So what's happening there? They have now a tax abatement they were given of 73.5%. Don't you wish you got a 73.5% abatement on your taxes? For 40 years. That was on Building 1. On Building 2, they got a 69% tax abatement for 30 years. And who gave them this? Well, at the time, it was Supervisor Blown, and this guy right here. His name is Robert Strickoff. I was going to talk about Robert Strickoff, and lo and behold, on Newsday tonight, it popped up that Robert Strickoff is being investigated. But let's go backwards. He was head of the IDA. And guess what he also was the head of? He was the head of the Democratic Party in the town of Babylon. So during the day, he gave out tax abatements to builders, and at night he collected, are you ready for this? Campaign contributions for the Suffolk Democratic Committee, the Babylon Democratic Committee, the Babylon Democratic Committee, the Town of Babylon Democratic Committee, Boulogne for Suffolk, campaign for a Democratic legislature. So lo and behold, he comes in front of the legislature, and guess what? They give him $1.7 million. Now, is this illegal? Probably not. But is it immoral? And is it the reason why your taxes are going through the roof? It's 100% why your taxes are going through the roof. And let me tell you the community that suffers the most because of this. It's Wyandanch itself. And here's why. I called the superintendent of schools today in Wyandanch, who was quoted in one of these articles, who says, listen, this is a burden on the community. We're not getting enough money. I'm trying to find out how much taxes they really pay because, quite honestly, they don't even own the property yet. They're going to be giving it to the town IDA owns it, and they're in the middle of transferring it over. So not only will they built these condos, they will own all the property. And by the way, below the condos are all types of retail space. That's when I spoke about last week about retail space. They couldn't book anything in there. So what did we do? Not me, but the county legislator voted to spend $1.2 million for the Long Island Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Wyandanch. That's you, the taxpayer, that is paying $1.2 million. Plus last night, $1.7 million for beautification, street lights, some wiring work into the third building they're going to build. Now keep in mind, they're getting tax abatements on all of this. So they're paying $45,000 a unit. They are getting a tax abatement, and guess how many kids they're sending to the school? 22 children go out of that complex. Now, how much does it cost to educate a person in that community? It's about $20,000. Actually, I think it's $25,000. So do the math. They're only, I believe, don't hold me to this, but I believe they're only paying about $100,000 in taxes on that property right now. It's actually called a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes. So what they're doing is, I wish I had the number. I tried to get it today. They couldn't get it for me. But based upon other projects that I've seen, it's somewhere, I believe, about $100,000, of which about $66,000 would go to the school district. But if you multiply 25 students times $25,000, Mike, do the math. What is it? $2.5 million. So guess who is paying the rest of that? The local taxpayers in the Wyandanch area. So what I did was I pulled up about a mile circle around that area, and there are currently 302 foreclosures or pending foreclosures going on. So now what happens? You're trying to pay your mortgage, you're trying to pay your taxes, and all of a sudden you're paying for children who's the builder isn't paying taxes for. Now your taxes are going to go up, making it harder for you to support your house. That's why we have 302 pending foreclosures and 111 houses for sale. So it's 3-to-1 foreclosures for houses for sale. That's a problem. Now, when we're looking at this, how does this happen? Let's take a step back. How does the head of the IDA also become the head of the Democratic Party? It would seem to me that would be some kind of conflict that, wait a minute, how could you be the head of the IDA? The guy who's going through companies and giving them tax breaks, and then at night you're collecting money. How is that possible? Well, it's over now because he got fired because the county executive was going to make him the IDA for the whole county. He was going to be the charge of the whole county. And then the supervisor over there called the DA's office and realized, shockingly, that there was $125,000 missing from this fund, the Babylon Town Democratic Committee fund, that was put in by various people, including that developer, and that there was a district attorney's investigation. So the district attorney's a Democrat, the town supervisor, Schaefer's a Democrat. So they start this investigation. He doesn't get the job. And guess what happens? The district attorney himself gets indicted. So this is what we're going through. Now, let's summarize again. Our chief of police, the head of the Conservative Party, both are in federal prison. The district attorney has been indicted, and the head of public corruption have been indicted and probably will be going to prison. This is what this county has been reduced to. It's absolutely absurd. Now, you would think in this day and age, we wouldn't let this happen anymore. It couldn't go on. But I was doing some research today, and I found out the new head of the Democratic Party in the town of Babylon is a guy named, I can't pronounce this very well, Peter Cassery, Casserly. And guess what? He's the new head of the Democratic Party. And that's at night. He collects funds. But during the day, he's part of the planning department. So when a builder's planning to do a plan, he comes to this guy, and he either approves the plan or doesn't approve the plan. And then at night, he has a fundraiser, and guess who shows up? I'm sure it's the people who are trying to build in that community. Ladies and gentlemen, the system is broken, it's corrupt, it's ridiculous, and it's out of control. And it's time for you people out there to tell your neighbors, tell your friends, research who you vote for. Now, I realize the election's not till another November, and really the county elections are 2 years away. But I'm going to continue this on and on and on until we get this stopped. I want to go backwards because last time we spoke briefly about the waiver committee. Just to summarize, the waiver committee is when we have a county contract and we say it's to rebuild the Cubsog Beach Hut, which burned down a couple of years ago. And it's, let's say, it was obscene, this was brought to my attention, $350,000 for the design of the new beach hut. And I called a friend of mine who was an architect, and I said, how could this possibly be? How could it be $350,000? And he laughed. He said, it's the government. That's probably a $35,000 job at the most, and you could probably buy one off the rack for $5,000, but that's the way it goes. So lo and behold, I went to the waiver committee, and they waived it so only 10 people could bid on it. And the 10 people who could bid on it, I researched, about 9 of them had given contributions to various people. So now, what is that telling you? We're taking the people from the outside and we're limiting who could bid. Now, what I didn't tell you about the waiver committee, and the most important thing that I left out is, who's the waiver committee? The waiver committee is 3 people, 2 appointed by the county executive and 1 by the presiding officer, 3 Democrats. So I've been going there almost every time for the past 4 years, and I've never, ever, ever seen them vote no. Never once. So it's basically a rubber stamp. And if it wasn't for me going and maybe the newspapers once in a while, there'd be nothing. There's nothing you can do. The system is broken. The IDA, they made reference to me recently in me making an allegation against the board of the IDA. It wasn't against the board of the IDA. It was against the IDA itself. They are giving very similar tax incentives to companies building apartments. There was one out in Selden where they were building 126 2- and 3-bedroom apartments, and they were only going to pay $156,000 in taxes. Now, I want you to think about that a minute. 126 2- and 3-bedroom apartments, and they were only going to pay $156,000 in taxes. That's the equivalent of 14 houses in that community. So if you got on a street and drove down 7 houses and stopped, and there was 7 on each side, that's 14 houses, that's the equivalent of what this 126-unit facility will be paying to that school district. And why did that happen? Oh, I don't know. Maybe the developer gave $150,000 to various politicians throughout the county. Maybe he gave 10% of it to the county executive, which is exactly what happened. Now, am I saying there's kickbacks? What I'm saying is it stinks to high hell. This system is broken. I've put bills in one after another that say, if you are doing business with the county, you cannot take more than $1,000. Plain and simple. You wouldn't have this. Like here, the new district attorney took $10,000 from the developer of Wyandanch Rising. Now, what happens with that? If there's some type of investigation, well, let's look here. The last district attorney got this case like 3 years ago and did nothing. Did zero. He sat on this case where the town supervisor made an allegation that this guy stole $127,000 and did nothing. Because what happens when you do nothing to someone? You stagnate them, you hold them. And what happened to the meantime? The guy got indicted. And guess who has to step in? That just came out today. Read the headline. It came out at 6:24 today. Feds eye actions of Babylon IDA chief Robert Strickloff. Right here. Came out today. And I was planning this earlier today to do this talk. It's absolutely unconscionable. I'm going to switch gears just before the end here and talk about Nassau County. It came out yesterday. Nassau County penalties are illegal taxes, the judge ruled. And in this, it says quite clearly what we've been saying all along. The mortgage fee, the surcharge on the red light camera fee. They just add these numbers. To give you an idea, the mortgage fee this year, which is whether you take out a mortgage, a home equity loan. I had a woman call me today. She paid off a mortgage and they sent her a bill for $565 after paying off your mortgage out of nowhere. It's basically just extortion. Either pay this or we don't clear your deed. And that's what's happening. So, and what happened is there's 6 women in that office who prepare this paperwork. It cost the county about $1.3 million to pay them and their supervisor a year. Now, fees have to be commensurate with the service rendered. Last year, I believe they collected $64 million. So that's a $63 million paycheck. Now, we're being sued for that. And this lawsuit is exactly the same thing. It says right in there, it has to be commensurate. And this is going to be a case law for this one coming up. So they did this, they did the $30 surcharge, and every other fee, which I will get into now, that's going to come along the line. We're gonna switch gears again to another thing that happened last night. We voted along party lines last night. If your cesspool needs to be replaced, you are now going to have, well, not now, coming up, I believe it's in July of 2018, get a permit. Now, why do you need a permit? You don't need to get the permit right away. You can have it replaced with a septic tank. I can do a whole hour on your sewer system, which is a big concern of Long Island. But let's go back with that. We were supposed to have sewers, but there was a scandal 30 years ago when people got put in jail for the Southwest Sewer District. So that's the reason we have these cesspools. That's, In some people, in some areas, it's a major problem. In other areas, hopefully it's not that much of a problem because the groundwater is very, very far below. So as a feel-good, pat-on-your-back type thing the Democrats wanted to do is now they passed a law that will take effect that says if your cesspool fails, a cesspool is just both tanks leak into the ground when you flush the toilet, when you take a shower. A septic tank is one holds it about 1,000 or 1,500 gallons, and then when that fills up, just the liquids flow into the cesspool and go into the groundwater. It's basically no different. But you can see we're updating our wastewater. We're trying to do the right thing. The water still ends up in the ground, no matter how you look at it. The waste, the excrement, whatever it is, the nitrogen still goes in the ground. So it's no different. But what does this give the health department the ability to do? Charge you the taxpayer fee. That's why the Republicans voted against it. Because if we were guaranteed that there'd be no fee, because there hasn't been any fee for forever, why would you need a fee? To keep track of it? Well, guess what? It's a computer. We can have people register online. We can give them a certificate. But the bottom line is, we're not answering the problem. The county executive, since he's been elected, he says number one concern is our drinking water. But let's not forget, we had $171 million in the sewer stabilization fund, money designed to sewer and do upgrades. He took out, stole, and paid regular operating costs because he got himself involved in contracts he cannot afford to pay, along with wasteful spending for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Wyandanch. When I used to tell people about that, they thought I was kidding. Well, I am not kidding. This is the kind of thing that goes on. I want you people to get involved. I want you to share this with the people of Babylon to have them know what's going on. Look, Babylon Village is a beautiful town, but I'm telling you there is waste and there are mismanagement in this county and in these towns. How can you give someone these type of abatements when they're major developers, very, very wealthy people? You can make the argument, oh, you want them to do something, you have to make it attractive to them. I agree with that to an extent. But you've got to be diligent. You've got to be on top of it. So for the next 40 years, this guy's going to essentially be paying no taxes, and he's going to be collecting rent. And he's going to own property that we owned one day. But what did we do? We gave it to him. And what did we do? The improvements. And, my fellow legislators have to wake up to the fact that this is hurting the other residents in that community. The superintendent of schools is not happy that, these extra kids are coming here and there's no money coming in. So I want to leave you with that tonight. If there's any questions, if there's anybody who knows anything about corruption or they believe they know about corruption, please contact me. You can call me in my office. You can contact me via Facebook. The office is probably better, though, because I got a ton of Facebook contacts. And be diligent. Contact me if you know anything that's going on. So let's say thank you and good night.